You know what drives me absolutely insane? This idea that you can't daily drive something interesting from the 90s. Everyone acts like cars from that decade are somehow prehistoric relics that'll leave you stranded the moment you dare to actually use them. Meanwhile, these same people are dropping 40 grand on crossovers with all the personality of a filing cabinet. I mean, come on. The 90s weren't that long ago. We had fuel injection, we had airbags, we had actual reliability standards. What we also had, and this is the kicker, was character. Real, genuine mechanical character. The 90s hit different. Manufacturers were still experimenting, still taking risks, still building cars for people who actually like driving. Not focus groups, not safety committees, not shareholders. Drivers. And the best part? These machines are hitting that sweet spot right now, where they're old enough to be affordable, but new enough to actually work. We're talking about daily drivers here, not garage queens. Cars you can actually take to work on Monday, autocross on Saturday, and maybe even pick up groceries in between. So I've been thinking about this for a while now, digging through classified ads at 2 in the morning like some kind of automotive archaeologist. And what I've found is fascinating. There's this whole category of 90s metal that everyone's sleeping on. Cars that'll start every morning, won't bankrupt you at the gas pump, and might even put a smile on your face during your commute. Revolutionary concept, right? A car that's both practical and enjoyable. What a time to be alive. Let's start with the obvious one that everyone forgets is actually from the 90s, the NA Miata. Yes, I know another journalist talking about Miatas, but hear me out. These things rolled off the production line starting in '89, which technically makes them an 80s car, but the bulk of production happened throughout the 90s. And here's what nobody tells you about daily driving one. They're stupidly reliable. I'm talking Toyota Corolla levels of dependable, except you're having actual fun while commuting. The 1.6 and 1.8 liter engines are basically indestructible if you change the oil occasionally. Parts are everywhere. Every mechanic knows how to work on them, and they get 30 miles per gallon while you're rowing through the gears like you're in a racing movie. The only problem is everyone knows this now, so prices have gone absolutely mental. But if you're patient, if you're willing to look at higher mileage examples, you can still find decent ones. Look for 94 to 97 models. They got the bigger 1.8 engine, but still had the simpler OBD1 diagnostics. Perfect sweet spot. And before you complain about practicality, I once moved an entire apartment in mine. Granted, it took 17 trips and my neighbor thought I'd lost my mind, but it worked. Now, moving on to something most people have completely forgotten. Existed. The Nissan 240SX. Not the drift missile ones with welded diffs and angle kits. I'm talking about stock, unmolested S13s and S14s. These cars are brilliant daily drivers when they haven't been destroyed by someone's fast and furious fantasies. The KA24 engine is a truck motor. Literally, it's from the Nissan pickup. That means it's overbuilt, understressed in this application, and will run forever if you don't boost it to the moon. Finding a clean one, though? That's the challenge. Every 17-year-old with a welder has ruined most of them. But they're out there. Check estate sales, look for one-owner cars, find the ones grandma bought new and barely drove. They exist. And when you find one, you've got a rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, perfectly balanced daily driver that nobody expects. Plus, parts are stupid cheap because Nissan used that engine in everything. Speaking of overlooked Nissans, the Maxima from this era deserves way more respect than it gets, specifically the 95 to 99 generation, the one they called the four-door sports car, and for once the marketing wasn't complete nonsense. These things had the VQ30 engine, which if that sounds familiar, it's because it's basically the grandfather of the VQ35 that Nissan put in everything for the next 2 decades. Bulletproof doesn't even begin to describe it, but here's what makes it special for daily driving. It's got 4 doors, a massive trunk, comfortable seats, and it'll still hustle when you need it to. The 5-speed manual ones are getting harder to find, but they're out there. And unlike the boy racer stuff from this era, nobody's ruined them with terrible modifications. They've just been quietly doing their job for 25 years. You can find nice examples for less than $5 grand all day long. Try finding anything that capable and reliable for that price new. You can't. Okay, switching gears here, let's talk about something German, the E36 BMW 3 Series. Now, before you run away screaming about maintenance costs, hear me out. The E36 generation, built from 90 to 99, is actually remarkably simple for a BMW. These are from before BMW lost their minds with complexity. The inline-six engines are legendary for a reason. They're smooth, they're powerful enough, and if you can handle basic maintenance yourself, they're not the money pits everyone claims. The secret is buying the right one. Skip the M3, it's too expensive now anyway. Look for a 325i or 320i. Manual transmission, obviously. These cars do everything well. They're comfortable enough for road trips, sharp enough for canyon runs, and reliable enough for daily duty if you stay on top of cooling system maintenance. That's the key with these. The cooling system is made of biodegradable plastic apparently, so budget for a refresh every 100,000 miles, but once you sort that, you've got a proper driver's car that makes every commute feel special. Here's where things get interesting. The Mercedes-Benz W124 E-Class. The last of the overbuilt Mercedes before they discovered cost-cutting. These things were engineered to last forever, and many of them have. We're talking about cars that regularly hit 500,000 miles without major rebuilds. The sweet spot is the 93 to 95 models. They got the updated interior, but still had the build quality that made Mercedes famous. And get this, they're cheap. Nobody wants an old Mercedes because they're terrified of maintenance costs, but these aren't modern Mercedes. These are from when they built them like bank vaults. Find one that's been maintained, and you've got the most comfortable, solid, reliable daily driver money can buy. The inline-six engines are unkillable. The automatics are actually decent for the era, and you'll feel like a diplomat every time you drive it. Plus, that classic Mercedes grille commands respect in traffic. It's psychological warfare for your commute. Now let's get weird with it. The Infiniti G20. Never heard of it? That's the point. This was Infiniti's attempt at competing with the 3 Series, except they did it by rebadging a Nissan Primera from Europe and filling it with leather. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, but here's the thing. The Primera was actually brilliant. It handled wonderfully, had a Revy SR20DE engine, the same basic motor from the Sentra SER, and came with a manual transmission. The best part? Nobody knows what they are. You can buy a clean, low-mileage example for less than $3,000. Parts are cheap because it's basically a Sentra underneath, but you're getting independent rear suspension, a limited slip differential in the manual cars, and handling that'll embarrass cars costing 10 times as much. It's the ultimate sleeper daily driver. Plus, people will think you're driving something exotic because they've never seen one before. Alright, time for something American. The 4th generation Camaro and Firebird. Stop laughing, I'm serious. The 93 to 2002 cars are actually fantastic daily drivers if you get the right one. Skip the V6 models, they're gutless and get terrible fuel economy anyway. Get an LT1 car from 93 to 97, or even better, an LS1 car from 98 to 2002. These engines are legendary for good reason. They're simple, they're reliable, and they make great power. The LS1 especially is probably the best performance bargain in automotive history. 350 horsepower, 28 miles per gallon on the highway, and it'll run for 300,000 miles if you change the oil. The T-top's leak, sure, but that's character. The interior plastics are garbage, absolutely, but who cares when you're sideways in second gear on an on-ramp? The problem is finding one that hasn't been molested by someone with a questionable understanding of modifications. But clean examples exist, usually owned by older folks who bought them new and babied them. These are proper muscle cars that you can actually daily drive without going broke or broken down. Here's one nobody expects. The Acura Integra, not the Type R, those are basically unobtainable now. I'm talking about the regular GSR or even the LS models. These cars defined the sport compact segment before it became all about giant wings and underglow. The B-Series engines are absolutely bulletproof. They'll rev to the moon all day long, and they get 40 miles per gallon while doing it. But what makes them great dailies is the whole package. The handling is telepathic. The manual transmissions are quite possibly the best ever fitted to a front-wheel drive car, and the visibility is incredible. You sit low, surrounded by glass, connected to everything. Modern cars feel like bunkers in comparison. Plus, Honda reliability means it'll start every single morning no matter what. The only downside is theft. These things get stolen constantly, but get a good alarm, maybe a kill switch, and you're golden. The Lexus SC300 and SC400, Toyota's answer to the Mercedes SL, except they over-engineered it to typical Toyota standards. The SC300 came with the legendary 2JZ engine, yes, the same one from the Supra, non-turbo sure, but that means it's under stressed and will run forever. The SC400 got the 1UZ V8, which is quite possibly the smoothest, most reliable V8 ever made. Both came with manual transmissions if you look hard enough, though they're unicorn rare. These cars are ridiculously comfortable, surprisingly sporty, and built like they're meant to survive nuclear war. Everything works, everything lasts, and parts are reasonable because Toyota used these engines in everything. You can find decent examples for $5 to $8 grand, and you're getting what was a $50,000 car when new. The only issue is they're heavy, but that just means they're planted on the highway. Perfect for actual daily driving. Now for something completely different, the Volvo 850 T5 or R Volvo in the 90s was weird. They were trying to shake their boring image, so they built these flying bricks with turbocharged 5-cylinder engines. The result is hilarious. They're still tanks, they're still safe as houses, but they're also genuinely quick. The 5-cylinder turbo sound is distinctive, almost musical in a weird industrial way. The best part about daily driving one is that nobody expects it. You look like a college professor, right up until you blow the doors off some kid in a Civic at a stoplight. They're also incredibly practical. Massive wagons that can swallow anything, seats that are more comfortable than most living room furniture, and Swedish reliability that means they'll run forever if you keep up with basic maintenance. Plus, parts are surprisingly affordable for a European car. Let's talk about the sleeper of all sleepers, the Ford Taurus SO, specifically the first and second generation from 89 to 95. Yamaha built V6 that screams to 7,000 RPM, manual transmission only in the early ones, and styling that's so anonymous it's basically invisible. These things were giant killers when new, embarrassing BMWs and Mercedes at a fraction of the price. Finding one now is tough, but they're out there, and when you do find one, you've got something special. The Yamaha engine is a work of art, all hand-assembled and balanced. It sounds like nothing else, especially with the secondary intake butterflies opening up at 4,000 RPM. Suddenly your grandpa's Taurus turns into a screaming banshee. Daily driving one is easy too. It's still a Taurus underneath, so parts are cheap and every mechanic knows the platform. Just budget for a clutch if it hasn't been done. They're known for that. Here's my dark horse pick. The Mazda MX-6, second generation, 93 to 97. Nobody remembers these exist, which is exactly why they're perfect. You could get them with the same 2.5 V6 from the MX-3, except in this bigger, more practical package. Manual transmission, four-wheel steering on some models, and handling that punched way above its weight class. They're front-wheel drive, sure, but Mazda knew what they were doing. The chassis is brilliant, the steering feel is better than anything modern, and that V6 is smooth as silk. Plus, they're cheap. Like, suspiciously cheap. You can find running examples for under $2,000. Parts are getting harder to find for some stuff, but the mechanicals are shared with the 6.26 and Probe, so you're not completely out of luck. Moving into luxury territory, the Infiniti Q45, the first generation, 90 to 96. Infiniti's Moon shot at Mercedes and BMW that everyone promptly forgot about. These things were technological tour de forces, active suspension, four-wheel steering, and a 4.5-liter V8 that was smooth as butter. They even had no grille originally, just a smooth nose, because Infiniti was feeling artistic or something. Daily driving one is surprisingly practical. They're reliable because it's still a Nissan underneath all the leather and technology. They're comfortable beyond belief, with seats that make you wonder why you ever thought German cars were the pinnacle of luxury. And they're quick, properly quick. The V8 makes great power, and the chassis can actually handle it. Find one with the four-wheel steering. It's hilarious to watch people's faces when you parallel park something that long, that easily. The Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4, not the base model, that's too boring. Not the Dodge Stealth either, though they're basically the same car. The VR4 with all-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, twin turbos, and more technology than a fighter jet. These were Mitsubishi saying, anything you can do, we can do more complicated. And somehow, it worked. Daily driving one requires commitment, I'll admit. They're complex, parts can be expensive, and working on them requires patience. But when everything works, which is more often than internet forums would have you believe, you're driving something special. The all-wheel drive system is brilliant. The twin turbos provide endless thrust, and the looks still turn heads today. It's like driving a concept car that somehow made it to production. Just budget for maintenance and find a good specialist mechanic. Okay, here's one that'll make people angry. The Chrysler LHS or Concorde. The cab Ford cars. Everyone hates them because they think they're unreliable. But here's the secret, the 3.5-liter V6 models are actually solid. It's the 2.7-liter that grenades itself, avoid those like the plague. But the 3.5, that's a good engine. And the rest of the car is surprisingly decent. You're getting a massive interior, like bigger than most modern SUVs massive. The ride is comfortable, the handling is better than you'd expect thanks to that cab Ford design putting the wheels at the corners, and they're dirt cheap. We're talking $1,000 running cars cheap. For daily driving, especially if you need space, they're unbeatable value. Plus, nobody will tailgate you because they'll assume you have nothing to lose. The Honda Prelude, 4th generation, 92 to 96. These were Honda showing off, pure and simple. The VTEC models especially were technological showcases. 4-wheel steering, VTEC engines that love to rev, and build quality that makes modern Hondas look cheap. They're like Accords that went to finishing school and came back sporty. Daily driving 1 is a joy. The H22 engine is bulletproof if you keep oil in it. The manual transmissions are typical Honda perfection, and the handling is sublime. They're practical too, with actual rear seats and a decent trunk. The only issue is finding one that hasn't been ruined by someone's interpretation of Fast and Furious. But clean ones exist, usually one-owner cars from older enthusiasts who appreciated what they had. Let's get really weird. The Isuzu Impulse RS. All-wheel drive, turbocharged, and handling by Lotus. Yes, Lotus. Isuzu hired them to tune the suspension, and it shows. These things handle like nothing else from the era, with steering feel that makes modern cars feel like video games. The turbo 4-cylinder makes decent power. The all-wheel drive system is remarkably sophisticated for the era, and nobody knows what it is. Finding one is basically impossible, but if you do, you've won. Parts are challenging, but the mechanicals are shared with other Isuzus of the era, so you're not completely stuck. And for daily driving, it's brilliant, comfortable, practical, reliable if maintained, and more fun than cars costing 10 times as much. It's the ultimate hipster daily driver. You literally cannot get more obscure while still being sensible. The Toyota MR2 2nd generation, 90 to 95. Not the turbo, those are getting expensive and can be temperamental. The naturally. Aspirated ones are the secret. Same basic 2.2-liter engine from the Camry, but mounted behind you like a proper sports car. Toyota reliability in a mid-engine package. It shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. Daily driving 1 requires adjustment. The snap oversteer thing is overblown if you're not an idiot. Storage space is creative at best, and people will constantly want to talk to you about it at gas stations. But the driving experience is worth it. You sit low, the engine sings right behind your head, and the handling when you get it right is telepathic. Plus, 35 miles per gallon and Toyota reliability means you can actually afford to enjoy it every day. The Saab 9000 Turbo, the last real Saab before GM got their hands on them. These were properly weird in the best way. Turbocharged engines that made great power, the most practical hatchback design ever created, and build quality that was borderline obsessive. The dashboard looks like a jet fighter, because of course it does. It's a Saab. Daily driving 1 is easier than you'd think. The engines are tough if you maintain them, parts are still findable through the surprisingly active Saab community, and they're incredibly practical. The hatchback swallows everything, the seats are perfection, and the turbo provides entertainment on demand. Plus, you're driving something genuinely different. In a world of boring crossovers, you're in a Swedish jet fighter that happens to have a trunk. Here's my wildcard pick. The Eagle Talon TSI AWD. Basically, a Mitsubishi Eclipse in a slightly different wrapper, but the Eagle version is forgotten, which means cheaper. Turbo, all-wheel drive, manual transmission, and tuning potential for days if you're into that sort of thing. But even stock, they're brilliant daily drivers. The Ford G63 engine is legendary for good reason. It's tough, makes good power, and responds well to basic maintenance. The all-wheel drive system turns it from a regular sport compact into something that'll embarrass much more expensive machinery, and they're practical enough with actual rear seats and a decent trunk. Finding one that hasn't been modified into oblivion is the challenge, but they exist. Check for older owners who bought them new and kept them stock. The Subaru Legacy GT. First generation, 90 to 94. Before Subaru became the official car of Vermont, they were building genuine performance sedans. The turbo models especially were rapid, with all-wheel drive and that distinctive boxer rumble. They're like WRXs before the WRX existed, except more practical and less boy racer. Daily driving one is what Subarus do best. They'll start in any weather, go anywhere, and carry everything. The turbo models are quick enough to be entertaining, the manual transmissions are decent, and the all-wheel drive means you're never stuck. Plus, parts are everywhere and every mechanic knows how to work on old Subarus. Just check for rust. They like to return to the earth rather quickly in salt states. Let me throw in one more because I can't help myself. The Alfa Romeo 164. Yes, an Alfa Romeo on a daily driver list. But hear me out. The 164 was different. It shared a platform with the Saab 9000, so it had some actual engineering behind it. The V6 engine is one of the best sounding engines ever made. The styling is gorgeous, and they're surprisingly reliable if maintained. Finding parts can be an adventure, and you'll need a specialist mechanic, but daily driving one is an experience. Every commute becomes an event. The sound of that V6, the Italian styling, the way it makes you feel, it's not transportation, it's theater. And honestly, at current prices, why not? You can buy a nice one for less than a used Corolla, and which would you rather drive every day? This whole list probably sounds insane to modern car buyers. Daily driving a 25 to 30-year-old performance car? When you could lease a sensible crossover with a warranty and blind spot monitoring? But that's exactly the point. These cars are from an era when driving was still an activity, not a chore. When manufacturers took risks, when character mattered more than focus groups, when cars had actual personalities instead of marketing personalities. The thing is, every single one of these cars will teach you something. They'll teach you to actually drive, not just point and press the gas. They'll teach you basic maintenance because you'll want to take care of them. They'll teach you that cars can be more than appliances, they can be companions, experiences, even friends. Sounds ridiculous. Drive a modern crossover for a year, then drive any of these for a week, you'll understand. Sure, you won't have adaptive cruise control or lane keep assist or 17 cup holders. Your phone won't pair automatically and the backup camera will be your neck. But you'll have something better. You'll have engagement. You'll have character. You'll have stories. When was the last time someone had a story about their RAV4? Exactly. The window is closing on these cars. Every year, more get crashed, parted out, or modified beyond recognition. Every year, the good ones get a little more expensive, a little harder to find. But right now, in this moment, you can still buy genuine enthusiasm for the price of a depreciated appliance. You can daily drive something that makes you smile, something that turns commuting from purgatory into pleasure. So, what are you waiting for? Stop reading about cars on the internet and go drive one. Find that weird dealer on the outskirts of town with the interesting stuff. Check Craigslist at midnight when the weird stuff gets posted. Talk to that old guy down the street with the covered car in his garage. These machines are out there, waiting for someone who gets it, someone who understands that transportation can be more than just getting from point A to point B. Because at the end of the day, we spend hours of our lives in these machines. Hours every week, thousands of hours over years. Why spend that time in something boring? Why not make every drive an experience? Why not daily drive something cool? The 90s gave us the last generation of analog performance cars, machines that you can actually work on, actually understand, actually connect with. They're reliable enough for daily use, cheap enough to actually buy, and interesting enough to make every drive memorable. That's the real tragedy of modern cars. They're so competent that they're boring. So isolated that you might as well be on a train. So complex that you can't even change your own oil without a computer. These 90s cars, they're the antidote. They're mechanical, visceral, real. They break sometimes, sure, but you can fix them. They're not as safe as modern cars, absolutely, but they make you a better driver by necessity. They don't have all the conveniences, true, but they have something better. They have soul. Maybe that's too philosophical for a discussion about 30-year-old cars. Maybe I'm romanticizing what are essentially old machines that most people would consider past their prime. But I don't think so. I think we've lost something in our rush toward autonomous electric crossovers. We've lost the joy of driving, the connection between human and machine, the simple pleasure of a perfect shift or a well-executed corner. These 90s cars, they still have that. They're from the last era when driving mattered, when enthusiasts were a market segment worth pursuing, when companies took risks to build something interesting instead of something safe. They're not perfect, none of them are. But perfection is boring. It's the imperfections that make them interesting, that give them character, that make them worth daily driving, even when a sensible modern car would be easier. So yeah, 10 cool cars from the 90s that you can actually daily, except it's really more like 20-something, because I can't help myself when it comes to weird old cars. Each one represents a different philosophy, a different approach to the same basic problem of making transportation interesting. Some are sports cars, some are luxury cars, some are just weird experiments that somehow made it to production. But they're all daily drivable, they're all interesting, and they're all waiting for someone who appreciates what they represent. The window's closing. Every year there are fewer good examples. Every year prices creep up a little more. But right now, today, you can still buy into this world. You can still experience what driving used to be about. You can still daily drive something genuinely cool. The question isn't whether you should. The question is, why haven't you already?